What is happening out there, Roto Scouts football fans? Long time no see, gang. Feels like, forever ago that we were talking about this baseball slate. On the clock, it was just about 16 minutes ago that we saw each other last. Took my time to build a quick baseball lineup, and then I was throwing together the dashboard here and confirming everything. And then I was going to run the Ace Mine Sims, and that's why I was saying, hey, tell everybody that we might be a couple minutes late getting started. But then I realized, why not just show you guys how to kick off the Ace Mine Sims on the show? So that's what we're going to do to start things off, and then we'll circle back around to get them and look at the results afterward. But this is just to show you guys. I've mentioned this a few times. I've got this just pre-built. That's what's on this Black Ace Mine tab over here. And I've just got it pre-built. Oops. Got to kill that column and the standard deviation. I'm just using the standard deviations that those guys are providing in their templates. But what I've got is, just to make life easy, AceMine has the templates for projection upload. You can also just map it and grab it from somewhere else. But since I don't have like a good go-to grab spot, I just built it this way. I've got a projection lookup, an ownership lookup, an MVP ownership lookup, and then field points. Just I use my own projections for that. So all I need to do is drop in the AceMine template here. This auto populates, copy it back, save it, re-upload it to AceMine. So it's pretty straightforward. But let me show you guys how to do that real quick. Hopefully real quick. Famous last words. Everybody doing well out there to start things off? Kind of just diving in with both feet to start the show. But let me say hi to Steven Leibowitz. So it's that baseball guy. That's right. What's going on, bud? Good to see you back. Harold Haas is here. Harold had a nice result that he tweeted about. Love to see the profitability, Harold. Let's spike a big one now. Those bankroll builders are great. Like you said, brick by brick, and that's the right attitude to have. But I want to see Harold go out there and spike a biggie now. Really get excited about this thing. Andy's here. Good to see you, Andy. So this is our AceMine interface, as you guys have seen in the past, and as we've highlighted on some shows. And all we want to do, this is the default info here, right? So they got their default standard deviations. They're also providing projections now, by the way. So you can get a little bit of projections with your subscription over there. They've got ownership numbers. I think they created those themselves. I got to talk to the guys, talk to Blaine and everybody, and find out how they're doing ownership, because that was one we discussed. I discussed it with them a while back, and I just don't really have a good means to crack it. So I want to find out what they're doing, but maybe I'll start using their ownership numbers. What do they look like? Oh, this is still on the yesterday's game. Probably best to have the correct game up there. That is not it either. This is the 16th. There we go. Glad I noticed that. So now that we're selected, and it's nice, we've got all the sports, all the sites, all the slates, everything in these handy little drop downs on AceMine now. So really done a great job building the site up. But for our purposes, all we need to do is go here, because we want to import and upload my projections and the ownership that we're going to use. You click that, you pop this guy open, and again, you can upload files directly if you've got the stochastic output, let's say. If you're a subscriber over there, you just click download and move it over. Grab the CSV, drag and drop it right into here, and it's auto-populated. They've auto-detecting ETR, stochastic, and a few more. You can also click here, which is what we're going to do, and just download the template. That guy pops up. That guy looks like this. Right? This is all their data. We just need to drop from here over into that pool that I built on the other spreadsheet. You can see they've got all the the player numbers, player ID, captain player ID, all that data and everything, some game data in here. And then this is their projections and ownership data that we want to replace. So we're going to go in there and just believe me when I tell you that I'm pasting it into the other one, along with the standard deviation numbers. And then I'm just copying it right back and overwriting with my data. Boom. Easy. Okay. That is up. All right. So that is, now that just needs to be saved. That's our FanDuel. Those just go on the desktop as AceMine upload. Ignore my files. And then we pull AceMine back up. And this only seems a little bit clunky because I've got to switch windows for actually showing you guys things. And you just go like this. You could also just drag and drop it, but I don't have the desktop convenient. Bang, import. It's all set because it's their template, and now my data's here. Slightly different. You get over here, you got all your options. I've got a preset. You can save your options, which is nice and handy. Run it a handful of times. I've been playing with how I like this. 60% of the results as far as the lineup scoring and how that sample, that end results thing that we see comes up. So you can set this however you want. If you want to be more focused on win percentage, if you want to be super focused on ownership, however you want it. You can call it projection min. I always use 1 for showdown slates. Typically, the guys projected sub 1 are your bench guys, your depth guys who aren't going to see the field at all. And then you get a couple guys in like the 1 to 2 range that are going to see 10 snaps and might make something happen. And those are difference makers sometimes on these slates. So I like to include those guys while keeping the sub 1 guys out. I like to set it way off the salary cap again on FanDuel. That's 12 grand off of the salary cap. I like to leave room on showdown slates. For a real slate, that would be a lot tighter in toward the salary. You get max percentage off of optimals, QB variance, skill position variance, defense variance, max players allowed versus the defense. For this format, I'm going with 2. I've been toying with that number as well. Just kind of builds tighter lineups, in my opinion, if you don't let it go 4. A lot of times you'll get 4 lineups, 4 player against defense kind of lineups that might not actually math out as or work out as well as the math by the numbers may, if that makes any kind of sense. So this is the setup. This is what we do. It's that easy. If you had lineups to sim against it, you drop them in right here. I just don't have lineups built to sim against it, but that's what you would do. You can do that through their optimizer over here. Pretty slick. And then we just go like that. Whoops. I didn't select the contest. See? Got to select your contest so that it knows what to sim against. So it's going to grab fields of 79,000 for this FanDuel contest. And now we click run. And then it runs. Reminds me I got to put my placeholders in. And now we just need to repeat that real quick for DraftKings. I'm going to take it off of the screen. Talk amongst yourselves for a moment. Actually, here, I'll give you guys at least a look at, where the fuck did the dashboard go? Give you guys at least a look at the dashboard for a moment. Oh, God. Why is that so messy? That's all looking, is that right? There's columns hidden from the main show because we don't have rankings and everything for these showdown ones. All right, good enough. All right, so let me just do this. Slow start to the show. I know, apologies for that, guys, but it's for a good reason. And because we had to do that baseball show that just ran forever. DraftKings, we want to go for the milli, and we just need projection. Oops. One day I should check what's in all those files that pop up when I do that. Make sure it's not like, this is my bank account number and my social security number as the file name. So this is what I was talking about before, where I just go in and I grab these, paste them in there, and then bring it on back. Easy peasy. Eagles. I got to put it with the defense. The one thing I got to do is just drop a little if error statement in for these defenses. It's always annoying with, for whatever reason, DraftKings doesn't like to name the city. They just go with the team name. FanDuel uses both. All right. Up. That's all good. Ownership. Projections. Everybody's got a standard deviation. And we save as AceMind. Upload DK. And we'll be able to talk about this slate momentarily, gang. Big absence for Philly, obviously, with no AJ. Going to have an impact on their passing game to some degree, but they've still got some capable pieces. The quarterback on his own still looks great. And we've obviously got a superstar at the running back position for the Eagles now. Kind of love Saquon. Scored 3 touchdowns in his Eagles debut. Kind of wish he was still a Giant. instead of the terrible quarterback that we're stuck with for all that money. Brilliant decision by the Giants. All right, DK. Pick the slate already. Just bear with me real quick here. This is what needs to change. Different salary cap, so you got to change that setting each time. Right, DK, run. All right, background sims are running. FanDuel's actually almost finished already. That's how quick it is, too, by the way. For these, 500,000 entry fields, it gets a little bit longer. But they provide some pretty quick results. Honestly, and I've said it before, if you just need lineups in a hurry, right? I need a big pool of lineups, and the sim will give me at least, I know they're good ROI for that sim, but I don't have time to sit here and optimize and build out a bunch of lineups. You can even get away with that a lot of the time. Just have the sim pool build as long as you're actually using the, good results. Steven Leibowitz points out, yeah, Millie winner Daniel Jones, solo Millie on DK. I was looking at that lineup. A little bit of cheating, in my opinion, in the social media sphere by my pals over at Awesemo. Smart marketing. I won't hold it against them. But every week they've been tweeting that out. Solo winner on DraftKings. Here's the Millie winner on DraftKings. Just providing the results to everybody. It's not actually a lot, at least in most cases. I don't think it's actually their data, their members. Clever. Smart way to do it. I almost grabbed it and did it myself. But, yeah, that was an interesting lineup. If I remember correctly, it was a Jones +1 and then an uncorrelated 3-man from the Texans, including the defense or something like that. Or not the Texans, from some other team, including the defense. It was a weird lineup, but it was effective. But, yeah, Jones was in a bunch of higher-performing FanDuel lineups as well because he was cheap. He was just cheap enough and just barely good enough to get you there. He almost didn't pull it off. Obviously, there were better quarterbacks, but in a point per dollar sense, he kind of got there. But, yeah, he was in the aboves. We had him and somebody else from that lineup were two featured players in the aboves. Mixed results for the above below this week. I wasn't thrilled with the results like I was week one. Week one, that thing crushed. All right, so let's dive in, gang. We've got the Falcons. We've got the Eagles. Battle of the Birds for dominance of the skies. 45.5 point total. Philly favored by 5 at home. But I don't know. I think Atlanta could be frisky enough to keep this interesting. Philly's defense is probably making the difference there. Last week, 3.3 yards per. Oh, sorry. No, that's the wrong side. I mixed that up completely. Philly's defense is not the thing that's making the difference based on their week one performance anyway. They were 32nd ranked, 7.8 yards per rush attempt. They're going to be better than that this season. Where were they last year? Let me pull that back up. Still at the point of the season where we're obviously comparing back to last season's output. Yeah, last year Philly on the ground was allowing just a 0.7 touchdowns per game on the ground, was ranked, one in the top third of the league, top quarter of the league, really. And then in a yardage sense, they were allowing 4.3 yards per rush attempt, which put them right in the middle of the league. So obviously, we're not talking about any 7.8 yards per rush attempt. Is that really the mark that they came in? Did I screw something up in this data upload? Let me just check that. Nope, that's the correct mark. 7.2 yards per pass attempt allowed was 23rd in the league last week. Against the pass last year, they were at 6.7 yards per attempt and 2.1 touchdowns a game. That's right. You could throw touchdowns against Philly for sure. The yardage average is just okay. They were kind of break, don't bend pass defense in terms of the touchdowns allowed. So you can see Atlanta with an effective Kirk Cousins, who I expect to be a hell of a lot better than he was in his first game. Decent weapons, a very good receiver in Drake London, a very good running back who's multi-talented in Bijan Robinson, a pretty good tight end in Kyle Pitts. At least some dynamic players in Mooney and Ray in terms of what they can do once you get the ball in their hands. Not bad downfield options. I expect better from Atlanta. I think they hang in this game. I really do. I think we've got a healthy total to work with. Philly's a little bit more straightforward and obvious. Hurts at the quarterback spot is a superstar. Model loves him. Everybody around the industry loves him. He's going to be the most popular player on both sites. Saquon looks tremendous for the money. Again, 3 touchdowns in his first game. Without AJ, you've got Devontae Smith in a lead role at the receiver position. He picks up a ton of value. He's appropriately priced for the uptick in opportunity, at least on FanDuel at 11.5. Might be a little cheap at 88 on the DraftKings slate. 11.5 is probably about right for him as the lead dog in the passing attack now. Solid downfield target, good hands, decent option. Dallas Goedert, somebody asked in the Discord if Debo's out with a calf. Jesus. It's getting ridiculous out there. Dallas Goedert, somebody mentioned in the Discord his minimal average depth of target in week 1, and my response was basically, as long as they're within 3.5 feet of the end zone, that's all I really care about with Dallas Goedert is some red zone targeting, some touchdown-based upside. I'm not expecting Dallas Goedert to catch 10 passes, run with the ball a lot. He might catch 5 or 6, and I'm really just looking for that touchdown. Probably get a little of additional opportunity for Jahan Dotson down board for a fair price, just $4,000 on DK, 75 on FanDuel. Going to be stepping into a bigger role, no doubt about it, this week. So that's kind of interesting. Paris Campbell up from the practice squad, 200 on DraftKings, might get a couple of looks. Veteran guy who we've seen before, low end, kind of a nothing projection for him, but he's only 200. Johnny Wilson's 1,000. Is Johnny Wilson going to be active? He had a Q tag earlier. Did I close these? I had both of these depth charts up with all their injury shit and everything, and I think I accidentally closed it during the baseball show because I'm dumb. Johnny Wilson, still questionable. Apropos of nothing, every time I hear Johnny Wilson or say Johnny Wilson, in my head, I hear Eddie Murphy saying Johnny Wishbone. Hammy, not practicing over the weekend. Rookie 6-rounder, played 17 snaps, 10 on offense, and was targeted once in week 1. If he's out there, it's a dart throw, but you probably just lean Paris Campbell. Considering that this kid's a rookie, late round pick, didn't get targeted, saw basically no action, 13% of the snaps in week 1. Again, Campbell called up from the practice squad, but there's probably a little bit more life there. Looking into some of the numbers, that's just kind of like my shape of the slate. Atlanta's defense in week 1, by the way, was pretty good. 3.3 yards per rush attempt, ranked 4th. 5.8 yards per pass attempt, ranked 13th. If we're looking by the numbers, 1.4 touchdowns allowed per game through the air last season for the Falcons, and they were giving up 6.3 yards per pass attempt, which was in the upper third of the league. So for touchdowns through the air, they were giving some up, but they were not giving up a ton of yardage per play through the air, and they were pretty good against the run. 4.0 yards per rush attempt was top third, and just 0.6 touchdowns on the ground per game was in the top 7 teams in the league last year. So Atlanta's defense wasn't, whoops. Oh, that doesn't matter because I'm on the other sheet. Atlanta's defense wasn't a joke, wasn't a pushover last season, and probably not going to be again this year. But Philly, with their star power, with a running back like Saquon, I think can overcome even a pretty decent defense here. So a lot of support in my mind for the inflated total, but potentially some interest in keeping Atlanta alive and making this a little bit closer of a game than the 5.5 point total might suggest. Just looking at the quarterbacks real quick first. Cousins threw the ball 26 times in week 1 compared to the 34 times that Jalen Hurts threw the ball. Pretty significant volume difference. Cousins didn't look great in his return. He threw 2 picks, which definitely impacted the volume because the other team gets the ball, obviously. 155 yards and a touchdown, 6 yards per pass attempt, a 5.3 intended air yards per pass attempt day. Not exactly taking huge shots down the field, but Cousins is a quarterback that I have a decent amount of faith in. I talked about it before week 1, and despite the lackluster performance last week, it remains very true. Before getting hurt last year, Kirk Cousins was on fire. He had several very, very good games at the beginning of last season. I know that, we missed everything after week 8 last year, but in those first 8 weeks of the year, he had 4 300-yard games. The lowest output among those 4 games was 344 yards. That was against Tampa Bay in week 1. Threw 2 touchdowns and 1 pick in that game. Followed that up the next week against this Philly team with 364 yards and 4 touchdowns. Next week against the Chargers, 367 and 3. A bad game against Carolina, of all teams, 139 yards and 2 TDs. Came back off that one with 284, nearly got to 300 again there against KC for 2 touchdowns. A couple of clunkers, or a clunker against Chicago, and then finished up with 378 yards, 2 touchdowns against San Fran. 274 yards and 2 touchdowns against Green Bay, and that was the game where he got hurt. And then we didn't see him until this messy game this last week. So I am in no way writing off Kirk Cousins because he was hurt last year and had a rough first game back. Absolutely believe that Kirk Cousins could succeed against this pass defense. And again, one of those 300-plus yard games and one with 4 touchdowns came against this defense last year. That was with Minnesota, obviously. But he's got a comparable 1-1 in Drake London as a prime receiver. He's got a better running back to work with who's got good hands. He's got a very good tight end. So I continue to like the upside for Cousins, and then Hurts is just a no-brainer. Again, he's going to be the most highly owned player on both sides. 2 touchdowns, 2 picks last week. He was taking shots, 7.1 intended air yards per attempt. Even without Brown out there, we've got reasonable shots down the field in guys like Dotson, guys like Devonta Smith. So no issues with the continued upside for Hurts. He obviously also gets a boost on the ground. He carried the ball 13 times for 33 yards. Didn't get into the end zone in week 1, 2.5 yards per attempt. But clearly there's touchdown-based upside there and all kinds of scoring potential from a guy like Jalen Hurts. Looking at the running backs, in week 1, Bijan, 18 carries for 68 yards. He added another 5 catches on 5 targets. So that puts us at 23 touches, 23 potential touches. You got to love the volume. We're always, and I've said this a bunch of times, but I'm going to keep on hammering the point. Football is a short sample, low opportunity, volume sport, which makes event-based sport, which makes volume absolutely critical. If you're going to pay a lot for a running back, you basically need to have 20 potential touches in play. And Bijan's going to give you that every single week. 18 carries, 5 targets, that's 23 potential, and he touched the ball every one of those times. Through the air, he ended up putting up 43 yards, 8.6 yards per target. That's on a negative 2.6 yard ADOT, which means I'm catching the ball behind the line of scrimmage, and I'm dynamic and I'm talented, and I'm doing a hell of a lot with it. To put up that kind of a total when he's getting negative, catching the ball at a negative every time is impressive. Negative 8.97% of the air yards. It's just always funny how that calculation works out. Came up with 68 yards on the ground, just 1 yard before contact per attempt, but I would like to think that he can improve upon that with better scheming, better play calling. 2.8 yards after contact, because he's good. In terms of the targeting last week in a limited game by Cousins, just 3 targets for London, 3 for Pitts, 3 for Darnell Mooney. Oddly, Ray led the team with 7 targets. A lot of downfield shots to, 3 downfield shots to Mooney, 13.3 yard average depth of target. He soaked up 27.59% of the air yards. Ray's numbers aren't popping up because he's the third. Just cheat and do it this way. Forget that his pricing isn't there for the moment. Ray caught 4 of those 7 targets. He posted 52 yards, 44.83% of the air yards on a 9.3 yard average depth of target. I wouldn't expect him to lead the team in targets again, but I think he's kind of an interesting option. I talked about him ahead of that game just because he's been a dynamic player. Anytime you get a guy who's been a career-long kick and punt returner, suddenly getting the ball in his hands in the offense as a regular piece of the offense, it becomes interesting because those kick and punt returners are in those roles for a reason, because they're really fast, they're really shifty on the field. Ray's good. This is a biggest opportunity of his career. Again, I think it's more like, these targets probably reverse. He gets 3. Drake London probably gets 10 in most situations. But especially at 3,000, 7,000 on a showdown slate, Ray McLeod is exactly the kind of player that can make things happen for showdown. I skipped over Algier when I was talking about the running backs. He carried the ball 3 times. Put up 21 yards, a 3.3 yards before contact, 3.7 yards after contact for 7 yards per rush attempt. He is an effective rusher. It's encouraging that they only gave him the ball the 3 times, but he's a guy who can absolutely poach some touchdowns from Bijan and probably will during the season. Didn't score in week 1, but if they get in close, Bijan's worked his way down the field. That could be one of those frustrating situations where it's, all right, Bijan did all the work carrying the load and then carried the ball on first down, didn't get in. Let's throw Tyler Algier in for a carry, and then we'll throw the ball on third down. If Algier doesn't get in, he punches the ball in, and you've lost your points. Bijan's absolutely the priority, but on a showdown, 36,900, at least at the DraftKings price, Algier is interesting and playable. I don't love the FanDuel price. I would like to have more than 3 carries. Again, volume is king, and 3 touches is not great. Falcons defense definitely in play. Probably going to be under-owned for their talent. Jungwei Koo definitely in play. Talented enough kicker, 5,000, 8,500. The idea of some need to kick some field goals to potentially win this game. Obviously, extra points and whatnot with scoring. But I can see both kickers getting involved. Elliott's very good on his side, 4,885 for him. He outprojects Koo, but Koo might see more opportunities. So a little bit of a split there. On the ground for the Eagles, Saquon carried the ball 24 times in his Eagles debut. He also caught 2 of 2 through the air, so that's 26 potential, 26 actual touches. Can't get much better than that. I think week 1, Joe Mixon carried the ball 30 times and caught a few targets, so he actually had more volume, but Saquon was right there. Saquon also put the ball in the end zone 3 times in his Eagles debut. Twice on the ground on 3.3 yards before contact, 1.3 yards after contact, and a very, very solid Saquon, like 4.5 yards per rush attempt. Put up 109 yards through the air. Again, two catches, 11.5 yards per target on a 10-yard ADOT. So Saquon not exactly catching the ball. Those aren't little dump-offs behind the line. Saquon goes out and runs a route, gets ahead of the line of scrimmage, and catches the ball down the field. 9.26% of the air yards and got in the end zone. Kenny Gainwell just carried the ball once, gained 2 yards. I'm sure they were very happy for him. He will probably be more involved as the season continues, spelling Saquon a little bit, but they really didn't go there. He drew 1 target in the offense. He caught it for 10 more yards. That was one of the behind the line of scrimmage plays, but limited option. 28.75 on DraftKings, a dart throw, but again, no real volume to speak of. So it gets very thin very fast with some of these guys, but the showdown nature of the slate says that becomes a decent points per dollar, and you could see Kenny Gainwell picking up 5 carries today. If he breaks one, which he has the ability to do, you're home free. If he catches a ball and breaks one, you're home free. They happen to target him in the red zone. Even if he doesn't catch it, you're home free. I mean, you're not home free, but you've made the right play. Smith last week drew 8 targets. He hauled in 7 of them. Didn't get in the end zone, but that's because most of the touchdowns or all of their touchdowns went through Saquon. But he did pull 29.6% of the air yards and has significant upside for more with no AJ running next to him. 8-yard average depth of target. I could see them looking a little bit deeper for him. He's very effective over the middle. He's very effective underneath. He's very effective down the field. So a true 1A type of a receiver to AJ Brown's 1. No issues with going to Devonta Smith, and he is cheap at 8,800 on DraftKings. Definitely going to see a lot of him in Sims. I'm just guessing, but I think it's going to come true. Goddard, maybe the idea of a couple of additional targets. He saw 5, caught 4 of them. It was on a negative 0.8 yard ADOT, negative 1.85% of the air yards. But again, all Goddard needs is to be targeted in the red zone. And is very touchdown dependent, 58.95. Not a bad option for a tight end who is going to draw some targets. And he'll draw targets as they operate down the field. But it'll just be for short yardage gains, a little bit of a safety valve. Dotson was only targeted once. He didn't come down with it. This one I got to pull up. He's obviously going to see an uptick in opportunity with AJ out, with a Johnny Wilson who's still questionable as of my last check. Dotson played 30 snaps all with the offense. He ran 23 routes, right? So he was just out there running sprints. They targeted him 1 time on those 23 routes. But the fact that he was just, for one, they went and got him when he became available. He played 42% of the snaps on offense, and now they're without their lead number 1 receiver, so he is going to step into additional targets. Maybe it's 3 to 5, maybe it's 5 to 7, and that'll be the difference between dart throw and actual just volume-based quality. But he's a guy who can get down the field. Let's see. Last season with Washington, 49 receptions, 4 touchdowns, 518 yards, 6.2 yards per target, 8.6 yards per target the season before on 61 targets. He put up 7 touchdowns as a rookie, 35 catches for 523 yards, and a few just bomb touchdowns, 7 TDs. Had a 14.9 yard receiving average that year. What's the depth of target that season? I don't know if I have depth of target on here. Not my board. Yeah, it's not in here. But suffice to say, a not reliable, but a potential downfield weapon. Paris Campbell, when last we saw him, was playing on the New York Giants. Completely forgot that. I'm a Giants fan, and I forgot that. Last relevant action for Paris Campbell was actually in 2022 with Indy. He played 17 games. He caught 63 balls on 91 targets, 623 yards and 3 TDs. 6.8 yards per target, 9.9 yards per reception. Just 1 catch over 40 yards that year. Between him and Dotson, Dotson, the same year was Dotson's bigger year. He had 10 balls over 20 yards, 2 over 40. Had 1 game over 100 yards. Campbell had no games over 100 yards and has never gotten over 100 yards in his career. That season, he was 7 times over catches over 20 yards and 1 catch of more than 40 yards. So between the two, I do lean Dotson, but I think that's what the entire world would do if Paris Campbell wasn't priced at just $200 on the DraftKings slate. Assuming he's on the field, and he should be because they called him up from the practice squad, that's going to put him in play even if it's 1 target. If he catches it, even if it's not for a touchdown, you probably paid off $200. It's a free square. So he's in play. Wilson may not take the field. 1,000 is very cheap on DK, 65 not so much on FanDuel. Grant Calcaterra did draw a target. He played like 40-something% of the snaps last week. 47% of the snaps last week. But he's really out there just as a blocker and second banana tight end. Every now and then he might get targeted. If he comes away with that target in the red zone, obviously it's impact making on a showdown slate. But he's not really one to chase. In his career, Calcaterra in 3 seasons has 10 catches. He does have 1 reception for more than 40 yards. That came back in 2022 in his rookie season. He's never scored a touchdown. So we're talking about a very limited second tight end. That's not one of our capable get out and get the ball Noah Gray type second tight ends. Britton Covey's on the board. What are we looking at with Covey? Still returning kicks, right? Maybe a little bit of additional upside just with the shortened depth chart. He ran 5 routes last week, saw 9 snaps. 2 snaps on special teams. Actually, he's not returning punts and kicks. Or he didn't in that game. Was it all just touchbacks? Well, he should be their kick returner. He gains a minor smidge of potential on that, but there's no real upside there. And again, he ran 5 routes, was untargeted in week 1. May get out there, may draw 1 target and make something happen with it, but it's very, very thin, and we're projecting him sub 1. Anybody that I missed that's overly relevant? Harold knows. Beverly Hills Cop 2. Yeah, Johnny Wishbone. We talked about the new Beverly Hills Cop, I think, right? I thought it was fun. Harmless, amusing, nice to be back with my old pals. It's definitely better than Beverly Hills Cop 3. 1 and 2 are all-timer action buddy cop movies, particularly 1. But yeah, I didn't mind the new one. It wasn't hysterically funny, but it was funny. It had its laughs. It had some solid Eddie moments in it, Eddie being Eddie. Brought the old gang back together, tied together a decent enough story. A lot of just, throwback, make it feel like the old ones. Give you like a 90s, 80s, 90s action movie type feel. So, kind of a throwback. I would rank it 3 out of 4 in the span of Beverly Hills Cop flicks. but it's always fun to go back and visit your old friends. I think it was better than the Coming to America sequel that they made that probably everybody forgot about because it came out during COVID. Banana in the tailpipe, exactly. That was a great scene too, just in the new one with the three of them, like back in the car again with Eddie in the back seat and everything. It was a cool little moment. Apparently when they were shooting that, they all got in the car, and before the camera started rolling, Eddie just looked at them like in the rear view from the back seat and said like, well, at least we still resemble our characters. Good stuff. So I think we talked about basically everybody up and down this board. Again, the guys that are sub one, your Ross Dwellys and your Casey Washingtons on the Atlanta side, you're really not expecting them to even be on the field. Charlie Warner, did draw 2 targets in week 1. I guess I did skip over him. And when we're looking for cheap tight ends and low end guys, 41% of the snaps last week and was targeted. 1,200 on DraftKings, 6,000 on FanDuel is odd. He caught one of the 2 targets for 4 yards. Has he ever done anything? Nothing that I remember. Doesn't mean he's never done anything. It's going to be out. I mean, this is another tight end that is almost exclusively out there for blocking purposes, like Calcaterra. He's caught in his even longer career, going back to 2020, he's caught 8, 11, 12 passes. Has never had more than 52 yards in a season and has never scored a touchdown. So despite the 2 targets, I think we're pretty limited. He would need to catch one and fall into the end zone with it. This is the guy I worry about for any Bijan shares, just with the potential to poach some TDs. One thing I didn't do, 2 things I didn't do. One was put in those placeholders when I said I was going to before. And the other was to correct these contest sizes. Let me do this real quick. And then we'll hand build a couple quick lineups, and then since we had the Ace Mine set up in the background, we'll dive into that. And again, if you weren't here, I was talking about it on the baseball show, and it's really, really true. I had another last night in the Showdown Slate. I finished tied with a handful of people. It was probably like 30, 40 people, so it wasn't a great payout, but I finished tied in 8th. And that was the second best lineup of the day. And I've been putting lineups in that territory every single Showdown Slate. Just taking my projections, exactly like what we do on the show, putting them into Ace Mind, and then sorting Ace Mind down to the minimized dupes, and show me good ROI lineups that have limited duplication. And we're all over it. We're gonna get one soon. So I strongly recommend checking out Ace Mind and using these tools the way that we use them on the show, because it's getting there. And I saw they've had a couple people with very strong results just from the product as well. So it's a true asset for these lineup builds. 79, 365. And then the DraftKings one is DK's pretty consistent around this 176 for the milli. Showdown featured. Too many clicks. Oh, smaller tonight. 132. They chopped 40,000 entries out of this thing. 132, 352. But it's $20 tonight, not $15. That's your difference. All right, let's look at some DK lineups. See what we can do. Let me just real quick check is this tracking the ownership correctly? It is. Fantastic. Any requests? Captains and whatnot? Harlem Knights, Golden Child, Trading Places. Yep. I would have put those in reverse order. I would have gone Trading Places, Golden Child, Harlem Knights. But, yeah. Classic Eddies. Metro. Metro was him and what's his face, right? Rappaport. They're cops. He does that scene in the deli, like, close your eyes, tell me what you see. Bananas are on sale for $4.99. Whatever Rappaport did in that scene. I think that's that movie, pretty sure. 48 Hours is obviously, yeah. Eddie was like 18 or 19 when they made 48 Hours. Eddie was like 18 when he saved Saturday Night Live in the early 80s. Just absolute one of the unique unicorn talents of all time. People lament that, like, you know, he got lost in making kids movies as his kids were growing up and everything, but like, that's a choice, and it's a valid choice for him to have made, and it's not like he made bad kids movies. Every single one of those kids movies is a good kids movie, and there are funny moments in each of them, legitimately funny, because it's still Eddie Murphy. It's just they're kids movies. But I mean, it was like, he's had a just phenomenal career. The thing that I'm a lot of people died, so I won't say it that way. One of the things that I'm most pissed off about from the whole COVID fallout thing was that was right when Eddie was supposed to be starting a resurgence of doing stand-up. He was going to go on a nationwide stand-up tour the following year, but he didn't. He lost all his, you know, momentum from COVID. Sucks. Would love to have seen him come out and crush stand-up. Andy says I get a real kick out of Norbit. Murphy and Pryor are my goats, says Mamba. Nothing wrong with either of those choices. Yeah. Highly, highly influential, and Pryor would be on Eddie's list of goats. Anyway, so somebody asked for Mamba asked for a Barkley captain. We'll start there. And so I'll grab the, obviously, so again, just looking back through time, through history of how results work with Showdown on DraftKings, you always want quarterbacks, primarily in flex spots. Today, you would see probably a lot of results when we pull up the Sims where we're going to get some Hurts in the captain role, just because Hurts is so good, projects so well, and is honestly reasonably priced at $10K versus the 10.4, 10.6 for the two running backs in this game. So that might reverse. But that's the reason that Kirk Cousins was my first choice over here. I just want the upside of a quarterback in the flex role. Since I'm going Saquon, there is correlation with him and Hurts, no doubt about it. Saquon's a good pass catcher out of the backfield. They see a little bit of upside there. They connected for a touchdown pass in week 1. But I'll skip Hurts to keep the cost down and just go a different direction here a little bit. I will go with London, and I'll give Cousins Kyle Pitts to throw to as well. And that still leaves us 52. We are perfectly fine on salary. We can do whatever we want in this lineup. What do we want to do, though? Let's go Goddard. Let's say that Jalen fails on his downfield shots to Smith, his limited action with Dotson, so on and so forth. Feeds the Saquon idea, feeds the idea of a Dallas Goedert touchdown, puts him on the board at moderate ownership, I'm sure. 4,700 left. I could grab the Eagles D and throw it in there. Although, considering I'm going with two of the premium players from the Atlanta side, I don't necessarily want to do that. You could go to like a Tyler Algier and try and get that poached touchdown since we're not using Bijan in this lineup. That's actually an interesting way to take this one. 12 dupes, leaving money on the table. That's not outstanding, but it would be playable. Elliott's 48. That's a stretch. Koo is 5,000. That doesn't fit. If I put, you know what? Do that. Oh, wow. 21. Never mind. I guess Ray Ray's drawing a little bit of popularity here. That Algier choice wasn't terrible. Let's see if we take Goddard out and put Algier in. And then what can I do with that 69 to make this better? I could get the kicker then. That's not bad. 4 dupes on a decent projection. $1,900 left on the table if you want to do it differently. Obviously, the entire lineup hinges on Tyler Algier poaching that touchdown. But that's not terrible. And it's realistic that he would potentially score a touchdown. He's at least going to carry the ball a couple times. Again, not a volume player in a sport where volume is king. But you can get there a little bit more with some of those guys on a showdown. If you wanted to go like Mooney in there, brings it to 8. We're pretty Falcons heavy with Saquon in the captain, but I mean, that's not unrealistic either. You're down to your WR2, a tight end who hasn't been all that successful, and then a bunch of mediocre players as far as who Jalen's throwing the ball to. Not completely crazy to think this could succeed at 8 dupes. I don't hate that lineup. Let's get somebody else in the captaincy. Just because it'll happen. You see how much is left? So if you free square the captaincy, you can put whoever you want in your lineup. Campbell's probably 0 owned in the captaincy in this. Yeah, there you go. Let's call that 1.5%. 1.5%. Brain is filled with malted hops and bong resin. So that's duped right now 73 times. If Campbell goes off at 1.5% in the captain role, obviously this is just giving it the best possible players, and you could still add Bijan into that. It's duped 35 times if you take it that way. But you can see the purchasing power of putting such a super cheap player in the captain role, and he's not without projection. It's not the craziest idea in the world to think that Paris Campbell's on the field for at least a few targets today. I don't love it. It wouldn't be my first choice. I'm not typically inclined to go that direction. I will typically let other people have it unless there's a little bit more meat on the bone opportunity-wise. But it's not nothing. There are some scraps of meat on that. Mamba asked, it's going back a ways. Who can we swap Cousins for? I just want the points, man. I don't care if they win the game or not. Take the quarterback points. Don't think about it in terms of whether or not they win the game. Let's go with let's go like a differentiated, like Pitts captain. I bet that's going to be fairly low owned. Give him Cousins. Take Jalen in that one. Take Devontae. I'll take let's go Campbell, cheapen things up, and now I've got 11.8 to spend, so I can have anybody I want again. So even if you threw like Bijan in there, well, that's low owned. We could swap out Campbell if we want to, and we've got 1,600, which means you could go, well, no, Charlie Warner's no good. You could go Britton Covey and hope that he gets a couple targets or runs one back. There are ways to go. It's not completely crazy. But with Campbell in there, that one's not duped at all. And again, you're several of the very best players, a lower owned but very realistic captain. Pitts gets in the end zone twice and Cousins doesn't do anything with anybody else. That's going to be the winning captain. Or as long as Philly doesn't do much. That's not a terrible lineup, and it's not duped at all. You could do similar things like London captain. Again, you would want Cousins. You always want your correlated quarterback. Yeah, not in love with that one. Just wanted to see where it would come out to. That's already spent all our money. If you went the Eagles D in that one, then you'd have 43. Again, you could chase that Algier poach touchdown, but it feels like he's going to be a little bit owned. I'm sure it's not a crazy number, but it's definitely still keeping us, around 10 dupes. I don't love the idea of the Eagles D against the Captain Drake London, but it's not something that it's not like it can't work. It's just more they need to rack up, a handful of sacks, a pick. Obviously, if they get in the end zone as a defense, they're off and running for you. Drop a Hurts captain on you. I'm going to give him Dotson and Goddard to work with. Make it limited. I go Bijan. I can still have Cousins. Got 58 now. No problem. Mooney. Oof, 190 dupes. That's how highly owned Jalen Hurts is in the captain spot. Let's see if we can make that a little bit lighter. Let me take Bijan out, and I'll go Cousins in London. Maybe there's a little bit of savings there. Maybe not. Yeah, a little bit. Cousins in London, and then we got to get different. 84. Leave money on the table, and Ray Ray's owned. Algier again, that's just cheating. You could go with Coup, but where's that going to leave us? 65, yeah. It's going to be difficult to get unique with Hurts. You got to get really creative. Obviously, like that would be, again, that's I just feel like that's cheating sometimes. If you go like Dotson, where's the Eagles? D. Elliott, and then it's going to be that's better. It leaves an absolute ton of money on the table. It's not completely unrealistic, especially if you get the Jalen rushing touchdown. They're getting close and they just throw him up and over the line. And then he throws his one touchdown, has his success, finds his success with Dotson, who is not going to be unpopular. Eagles defense comes through along with the kicker, drags him along for the ride, and then just two of the more high-end players from the Atlanta side, and you're only duped 13 times. That's probably one of the lower numbers that we would see with like realistic players in there. Again, if I just wanted to cheat, I could just do this, right? But nobody's going to want that. So that's one of the paths, at least, to making Jalen a little bit lower. A little bit lower owned is just gotta get a little bit more creative when you get it in there to get away from the field. Because again, if you do 500 times, you haven't actually won anything. You've finished in first place, but you haven't been profitable. So it's like that conversation about parlay betting versus straight betting, and how the odds work, and how like your win-loss record works. And I was reading some guy's article about this last night, so it's fresh in my head. But you see those all the time with like guys tweet out like, I'm up $100,000 on parlay betting this year. And then like their one-loss record on their bets is like, I've won 30 bets and I've lost 147 bets. And you just got to think about the math because the payout obviously is significant. So it's the same thing. You're getting away from the dupes. You're potentially reducing the number of times that you win, but you greatly improve the amount that you win in those times that you do win. That's what we're chasing with Showdown. Quick, I'm going to build like one FanDuel lineup. It's more interesting, especially with FanDuel, to just pull up Ace Mind and see what we're looking at. But just for the hell of it. Cheap Kirk Cousins. And now I can have anything I want. Can't have Bijan there. If I went this route, see, I don't want to pile that in. The reason I hesitated, I was just about to drop Pitts in there, and the reason I stopped is because I remembered I had Drake London in the captain spot, and that means I really don't want Kirk Cousins to throw additional touchdown passes to anybody other than Drake London, because otherwise that doesn't math out, and you would want Cousins in the MVP because there's no salary multiplier there. That's the difference between, that's when you win with a skill player in the top role versus the quarterback. That happened last night with whoever the pass catcher was. But I don't want to go that route because I don't want to give Cousins somebody else to throw to in that lineup. Obviously, you would get the scoring if Pitts got in, but it would make Cousins, you would lose to lineups that had the exact same lineup, but Cousins there and London here. What if it was, no, that's Ray. That's the same thing. Same thing, dummy. Just get it done with. There you go. Less than 2 dupes. You could succeed with that. Saquon has a day. Goddard catches 4 or 5 passes. Happens to get in the end zone, but it doesn't really impact because Jalen didn't have a good day. Elliott kicks some field goals because Jalen didn't have a good day. That ties right in. Also feeds the idea of, even if Saquon rushes for 150 yards, finds the end zone just once and is limited compared to like a last week kind of a game, all of that feeds the idea that the tight end and the kicker could succeed. And then London and Cousins just connect a few times. I'm going to play that lineup, honestly. I like that. Let me pull up Ace Mine and we'll take a look at those results, boys and girls, ladies, men, whatever we're calling each other these days, and all people in between. don't want to exclude anybody. And I'm not being facetious. I really don't. DraftKings, here's your board. So you can see right out of the gate, our top 20 here, number of skill players in those captain roles. Some Pitts, some Saquon, but we did get some Hurts in there. As I was mentioning, I was expecting to see that just because of how he's offset by price. You scroll over this way again, you can get to your information about the dupes. So very limited dupes for those top three, and then we spiked to 126 dupes with this one. That's probably a Jalen. Yeah, see, that's a Jalen. And it's an underperforming lineup by comparison to those top couple, but obviously the top couple are the very best. That one's still very good. That lineup, even duped that many times, is still bringing back $700 on average because you're splitting $1 million, 100 and whatever ways. But these guys are pulling 1,000 plus on average, and they're not duped, or they're very, very minimally duped. You can use these tools to sort it down as I've done. So this is how I've been doing it. I've been calling it 10 and then just kind of picking lineups that are under 10. So that's going to use the dupes field to take those 100 and change ones out. And that's effective if you want to just go like this. You saw what I did with the drop down there. Now this is my top 150 all just accessible right here. And if you change this, you can get it up to 500 if you go with the custom. The numbers over here for the ownership exposures change, reflecting whatever's in your pool here. But if you just wanted best 150 lineups by whatever sort criteria you put in, and then taking out 10 dupes or everything above 10 dupes, you just click here and you get your export, and you can drop that directly into DraftKings templates. So pretty killer there. But this is how I like to do it. Oh, I didn't even realize you could do that. That's exciting to find out by mistake. That's awesome. Good feature, guys. I didn't realize I could do that. I click out, you see what's happening here? I'm clicking on guys, right? Click on Saquon, and now it pulls Saquon's just numbers up to the top for me. So in these top 150 lineups, Saquon is in 33% of them. He's in the captain role, most importantly, 19% of the time. It's kind of interesting. If we're looking at Kyle Pitts, he's in 37% of flex roles. He also landed in 21% of the captain roles. If we're looking at Jalen, 53% in flex. Again, critical to have quarterbacks in the flex roles. A little bit less important in that top 150, but 21% obviously still does get there. But that suggests to me that he's probably going to be more popular in the captain role than what his actual output looks like, which suggests that I want him more in the flex. Cousins, going to be the reverse. Yeah, 76% in the flex, just 12% in the captain role. But I wonder... Okay, that's bananas. There's no way that's correct. Not the numbers on AceMine, the number from RG. So I'm sure Cousins' ownership number in the captain role is probably not crazy high across other sites. They've got him at a baffling, to me, sub 1% owned in the captain role. And so that's exactly the kind of thing that we want to look for. Let's say that they're wrong. But them being wrong, they're not going to be wrong by a factor of like 25, right? So that means that Cousins' ownership is probably in the captain role going to be 5 to 8%, maybe. And in our top 150 here, sorted down to fewer than 10 dupes, we got Cousins 12% of the time in the captain role. That means the field is underplaying Kirk Cousins in the captain role fairly dramatically. Even if I take away that dupes thing, I bet you it's going to be similar. $77 and 10% across just the pure top 150 lineups with no restrictions. Kirk Cousins in the captain role is under-owned. That's what you can discover with these things. So even if you're hand building, that's the value of running sims and stuff, because you discover that and then you say, all right, let me drop Kirk Cousins by hand into 5 more lineups, and then I'm ahead of the field. There's advantage to be gained there. Devonta landed in the flex 32% of the time, 7% in captain roles. Interesting stuff. Let me stretch this and I will, let's see. All right. Best way to show you guys some of these real quick here is, let's go by this. This is sorted by those factors that I asked it for, where I'm saying 60% by ROI, a little bit by win rate, so on and so forth. So you can see like the average cash one will bounce around a little bit. Like this is a $900 winner that ranks down here versus like a $700 that ranks up there. So it's just dependent on what you ask it for. But just to make it sane, I'm going to sort it by average cash one, and then I'm going to take out anything with more than 10 dupes. So you guys can see what, in my opinion, are the true best lineups of the day. And there they are. I'll go slowly. Absorb what you see there, gang. A lot of Pitts, Saquon in the captain spot. Again, we're going to want some Cousins to get in the captain spot here. There's one. Cousins, Saquon, Hurts, Pitts, Mooney, Algier. A lot of value in running these things. You can see a lot of the, the bottom end guys creeping into shares. You know who I'm not seeing actually is Mr. Campbell. Campbell landed in just flex rolls 3% of the time. We did not have a Campbell captain hit the top 150. This has a giant pool of stuff to work with, by the way. This was run, 70,000 whatever, or 132,000 lineup pool, run 5 times over, 50,000 times per each of those 5 times. So there's a lot of data that we're working with here. All right, this is going to be the last thing I do because it is 7:30, I just realized, and I got to get some lineups built myself. Fortunately, I've got some made already in here, which is the other advantage for showing you guys Ace Mind a little bit. Without that dupes restriction, across the top 500 lineups, let's see if we landed on any Paris Campbell captains. We did not. He did land in 6% of the flex rolls in the top 500 lineups, but that is unrestricted across results, expectations, etc. But that is a good example of why those $200 guys, without real expectations, unless you had a guy like a starting running back at $200, is obviously a very different play. But you don't see that all that often. This is very, very limiting and limited. It's just creating a nice looking lineup. And you say, oh, well, if I put Campbell in the captain, now I can buy whoever I want in those flex rolls like I did in that example lineup. But it doesn't get you anywhere. Or very few times. FanDuel side, it's all jailing all day long. Not surprising. There's a Kirk Cousins sneaking through there. On FanDuel, Kirk, 90% of the time, this isn't Blaine, if you're out there. We got to get an MVP and flex split for FanDuel, please. Would help. But you can see, regardless, we're getting a ton of both Hurts and Cousins. 89% across both rolls, 66% across both rolls. FanDuel's relatively straightforward. A lot of Ray coming up. Saquon at 23, Bijan at 23. Could press the accelerator down a little bit with them. Eagles defense coming up 20% of the time in the top 150 just raw performers is not bad. Falcons D at 16. I bet you the Eagles are under-owned to 20% across all rolls. Yeah, that's like a solid 3x position on the Eagles. That's not bad. Might be valuable to work some Eagles defense into your FanDuel lineups because again, they're coming up 20% of the time in our top 150 across all roles, and it's primarily in flex. You can see everybody's just dominated by a lot of Hurts and then a couple random skill players as I scroll through there. So that's almost entirely in the flex, but that's against an ownership projection of like 7-8% for the public ownership. So loading up on some extra Eagles defense, you don't have to get it out to 20%, but that is indicative of the fact that they're probably a little under-owned. You can see they're in this 5th best performer right there. In terms of dupes, some of these will be duped through the ceiling, but some of them not bad at all. Very limited up top. There's a 27, but that's not too bad. Those top few lineups are pretty damn good. $600 a pop coming off of no dupes against a 100,000 prize pool on FanDuel instead of a milli across town. It's pretty good results. Got some Ray mixed in there. I feel like the ownership might be impacted a little bit by some skewed numbers maybe that RG's providing here because I think those lineups would probably be just looking at them, eyeballing them, and thinking about them. Those would probably be a little bit more owned. Each of them, the top one spends all your money. The others just leave $500 on the table. I'm skeptical about whether they'd be this low on, but they probably come in around 10, 12 dupes a piece. That's not Ace Mind's fault. That's just the ownership data that I'm feeding to Ace Mind. They're not quite the best. It's mostly in the flex. Like last night, I think the flex ownership was in like the 30s or whatever for the quarterback, and it went to like 60%. So got to make some tweaks to get it exactly right, which I didn't have time to do. But there's your FanDuel pool. Some decent constructions. There's Devonta, Jalen, Kirk, Pitts, Ray, Bijan. I'm mostly inclined to do that. I'll take my Hurts shares just to pad out my probability. I'll take my Cousins shares because he's going to be under-owned in the MVP role. And then I'm going to look to a lot of, Devonta, Bijan, some Saquon in the captain spot. I'll probably get a Dallas Goedert or two in the captain spot. I'll kick around some of the other ideas. Bijan in the captain spot. Pitts is going to be under-owned in the captain. I wonder if he came up at all. He's a ton of flex. Did we get him at all in the MVP? Nope, not in the top 150. Maybe I won't go to a Pitts cap MVP. Oh, there he is. We got one. So it's just outside our 150. Pitts, Hurts, Saquon, Philly, and the Eagles. That's a weird one. That's something that you get sometimes, and obviously it did have moderate success going through. It brings back $100 on average. It's obviously doing better than that one and these ones, but I don't love the construction when it comes to what we talk about a lot of the time for just how to build these lineups. An uncorrelated tight end in the MVP spot without his quarterback is maybe a little limited. It does speak to the idea that Cousins threw one touchdown pass and it went to Kyle Pitts. And then the nature of this lineup, this is probably the best version of an uncorrelated tight end in the MVP spot that you can make, because you can make an argument that Jalen runs one in or two in, Saquon runs one or two in, but it's not a big passing day, so it doesn't matter about any of the other skill players from Philly, and it doesn't matter that there's nobody from Atlanta. And then you're playing the Phillies defense, or the Phillies defense, the Eagles defense, against those Atlanta opportunities, and you're playing the Phillies kicker along with that. So it's actually an okay construction if you said, I want to build the best possible lineup with an uncorrelated tight end in the MVP. That's probably the way to do it, but it's still not a great lineup. Anyway, guys, that's your slate. A little bit up and down. Hopefully we got some good information out of here. Hopefully we saw some decent results. Mom is going to win the Millie outright when he puts Michael Penix in the captain role. I like it. That's about it, gang. Any way to fade Saquon tonight, Greg asks. Yeah. I mean, there is. Greg, I think you're on DraftKings, right? Showdown Slate especially. I mean, you can get around, guys. There's a Saquon lineup. Nope. This one. Third best lineup on DK. Doesn't have Saquon in it. Neither does the fourth. Neither does the fifth. The top two do. The sixth does. Most of them are gonna. But again, when he comes up, it's just 33% of our... that's top 500. It was around the same numbers, right? So he was coming up in our best lineups 28% of the time in the flex roll, 17% of the time in the captain roll on DraftKings. So yeah, and especially if the public ownership exceeds these numbers, which it well might, that means it's easy to get around. Phenomenal play, very strong likelihood to lead the slate in scoring, but no guarantees. Plenty of ways to dance around it in Showdown. What I'd want to do there would be to draw some kind of a, you want to write the story in your head as you're building that lineup, right? Especially if you're hand building. Saquon's not going to succeed. Where are the Eagles' points going to come from? So obviously Hurts. Obviously one of the pass catchers, maybe two of the pass catchers, and you just focus that direction. It also feeds the narrative, all right, if Saquon's not having a good day, that probably means that the Falcons have the ball in their hands a little bit more than expected. So maybe it's a Falcons captain. Maybe it's one of these Kyle Pitts lineups. Maybe it's a Cousins captain lineup. Maybe it's a Bijan captain lineup. So just tell the story about what that game's going to look like. What's the game flow in a day where Saquon disappoints? What happens to the Eagles? What happens to the Falcons? Tell yourself the story. You've watched enough football. You know how these games go. And then build your lineup accordingly. And that helps you get lower owned with all those decisions, because people who draw their lineups out of optimizers aren't going to get that story told, right? Some of the lineups will come together that way, some of them won't. So I think especially for hand building in these showdowns, it pays to think, all right, based on that decision that I made, that first decision, what do the rest of these decisions look like now that is what this lineup thinks this game is going to be like? It's an under-discussed aspect of DFS for hand building. All right, that's it. 7:41. I got to get some lineups built and entered, and I just got to stop talking. It's been a marathon. Love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already. We've got a paywall coming down this week for sure. So be ready. It's going to be very affordable. It's not going to break the bank, I promise you. And it's going to give you access to everything we got. But it is going to drop this week. That said, come on back on Thursday. We'll have a YouTube show. We'll be looking at all this stuff for single game slates. Some baseball shows in between all week long. We're still rocking and rolling and talking baseball there. It's been a lot of fun. And I'm going to punch out. Good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something, particularly $1 million on DraftKings. It's in play. See you guys tomorrow.